Welcome to Real Coaching Radio, the podcast for coaches by coaches. We are here to teach you how to get the most out of your clients and yourself. This is where beauty meets the beast, brains meet brawn, and science meets, well, bro science. Welcome to Real Coaching Radio. In this episode, me and Mark, we talk about why training like an athlete or an elite sportsman probably isn't the best thing for you to do. When you see someone training a certain way and they are somewhere in their career, maybe they are where you want to be. Well, they didn't start there. That is not where their career started. So for you to copy how they train currently is probably going to be a detriment to you and your progress. Take everything into consideration and be honest where you are and start there. But without any further ado, let's begin the episode. First thing, they're making. Have you seen the first Space Jam?
Yeah.
So they're
Michael
making.
Jordan.
They're
Who
making a
hasn't seen
second
that?
one.
They're making a second one.
They're making a second one, and LeBron James is like Michael Jordan, but LeBron James in it. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because have you seen LeBron James's feet?
Well, I literally just Googled it. And
I was going to say it, they're mangled.
they're, yeah, price you pay, eh?
If you look at LeBron James's feet, like, I wonder what size feet he's actually got. But his toes are like all on top of each other and they're all like squished in on top of each other. Like, it's not, it wouldn't be what I'd call like a healthy looking foot. And the reason I want to bring that up is because like LeBron James is obviously one of the best basketball players ever to have played the sport, right?
Yeah, if anyone's going to replace Michael Jordan in Space Jam, it's got to be LeBron James.
It's got to be LeBron. And he has, like, and I genuinely mean this, like, his feet are probably, like, disgustingly broken. Like, they don't look good at all. They are probably not what we'd call, like, good feet. For example, like, when I think about, like, my feet, I have flat feet. Probably not, like, that strong with my feet, and he's probably the same. But, like, with him, with those feet, like, if you tried to change anything like that might change how he played basketball. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you spent a lot of time focusing on things like that.
Well, it's like Cristiano Ronaldo. His running mechanics are terrible.
He runs like really long arm.
Yeah, like his running mechanics are terrible. However, he's rapid.
Yeah.
So if you try to change that, there's a possibility that you're going to slow him down.
So this is where it brings us like onto what we want to talk about today, which is when you decide you're going to start training and you decide you're going to follow a program, or you decide that you're going to go on Instagram and follow the latest workout that The Rock's doing, think about who they are and who you are. Basically, are you an elite athlete? And is training like an elite athlete the best thing for you? What would you suggest?
In pretty much every single case, unless you are an elite athlete, my answer would be no.
Okay.
Because you're not an elite athlete.
It's simple as that. Podcast done?
Yeah.
Podcast done.
Yep. Episode finished.
So, in all seriousness, though, like I've had the reason this has come up is I had a client who I changed his program around. He was doing a body part split, and I changed his program in to basically do shoulders, legs and shoulders on the same day, chest and back on the same day, and they would kind of cycle in that four-day cycle type thing. And he questioned it and was just saying that, I don't feel like I'm fatiguing the muscle enough. I don't feel like this is like the right way to be training. And the point for me was that I do that for a specific reason. So we're focusing on strength. And the main thing that he wants to do is get stronger. So if he wants to get stronger, I know that sometimes putting frequency in and doing different things with his lifts. So for example, on Monday, he'll be back squatting, just a normal back squat. On Wednesday or Thursday, he will be doing a pulls back squat. So the weight's obviously a lot less, but we're kind of working out of that bottom bit. We're trying to keep him tight in that bottom position, and we're working on things other than just like the movement itself. We are kind of trying to expand the kind of skills that we have alongside that. So that's why I decided to do that. Now, I have two thoughts of this. One is why he's deciding that it's not right, why he feels like he needs to fatigue the muscle, which is not anything wrong. It's not uncommon. It is not like I'm here bashing him for that, because my point is with things like this is once you know better, do better. And for someone like that asking the question is like, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? And the probably reason that comes into play is, yes, he probably doesn't feel like he's getting a pump, but when you look at anyone on Instagram who's quite strong, who's quite big, it just seems like they are doing a body part split. Am I right?
Yeah, it's like the bro way to train, isn't it? And it's just like everyone wants to do back and biceps, everyone wants to do chest and tricep.
When you first started, was that similar? Like,
oh mate, yeah, that's always been the way.
It's always been the way.
That's and in fairness, that is where my training began.
That's where my training began, and that's why it's not a problem. This is the thing; like, it's not an issue. It's just the fact that there could be better options for you, and there could be reasons behind doing something to help you achieve your goals. So when you decide to follow a program, or maybe you decide that you're going to become one of the fastest sprinters in the world, and you decide to copy Ronaldo's running pattern and the way he runs, you have to question to yourself, like, why does it work for that individual? Because everything is individual. And if someone comes to you and says, this is the program that one fits all, like, that's complete and utter rubbish. You need to question yourself and question, like, what works best for you. And that's why trying something like this, of kind of changing up how you train, going from a body part split to full body, or to kind of doing a push-pull legs, or one of these scenarios, you will start to kind of explore different ways of training and what works best for you. So when it comes to looking at how elite athletes train, question, where are you right now, and will that best suit me?
Well, I think the biggest place people need to begin is understanding the difference between probably elite athletes and, unfortunately, the reality is like potentially who you are. You know, so elite athletes are probably, first of all, genetic freaks. So have this genetic ability to be able to do X, Y, and Z in whatever discipline it is. And then secondly, they're probably relatively close to their genetic potential. Whereas when you either first start training, or whether you're 5 years into it, 10 years into it, unless you've been giving it like proper serious attention, and that's another topic to talk about potentially this podcast or even within itself, there's a large possibility that A, you're not a genetic freak, and B, you're also nowhere near your genetic potential. So the gap between where you are and where LeBron James is are two very different situations.
There's a lot of skills which go into whatever discipline you're in, right? So there's obviously the physical aspect. If we're kind of staying along the sport side of it, there's the physical aspect. You need to be like physically strong, you need to be fast, you need to be fit. But then there's the mental aspect, that skill side of it as well, which comes into play a lot of the time. And even if you just kind of take that over into like a gym scenario, like a lot of times people just don't have the same makeup when it comes to like the balls that they have when they go into a session. Like, are you in the right place for this session? When you look at like elite athletes, like, or bodybuilders or things like that, a lot of times, well, they are kind of in that position because they have sponsors, they have people doing their food, they have all of these different things. So they don't have to worry about that. The stresses that they have are like almost minimalized. And if you go into a training session, you could do the exact same session on a Monday, and you've had like great sleep, you've woke up, you kind of had breakfast, you've not really checked any emails, you haven't done any work, you're not stressed, you train, you got the best music on, you're in like the right frame of mind, you'll get a really good session. The week after, What happens 10 minutes before you go into like your training session? You get a phone call from a family member saying like one of your grandparents has passed away. Do you think your session is going to be exactly the same? And I know that's an extreme version, but my point is we have daily stresses that go on through our life that maybe elite athletes don't have to deal with because their job is their sport and is their like elite thing that they are doing.
Mm-hmm. But also there's the side of it where, so I don't know if you've seen it or people that are listening have seen it, that Save the Last Dance, Michael Jordan?
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy used to get up at 3:00 in the morning and go training before training.
Yeah.
So training would start at whatever time in the morning. He would get there 4 hours before to train before training. You know, that's the mentality. Whereas a lot of people, and the thing is, like, the reality is this is fine. Like, just don't kid yourself into trying to say you're going to do something and then not do it. Like, if you don't want to do it, that is actually okay. A lot of the times when people say, "Oh, I can't do that," what they really mean is, "I won't do that." That is still fine. Like, there is an understanding that people need to understand that that's okay. But like, some people start work at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. They're just like, I can't train before work. It's too early. Well, you can.
This makes me laugh.
You can train before work. You don't want to train before work.
And that's where we come to being realistic with your goals and stuff like that. Now, like, when it comes to making that decision of, do I want to achieve this big goal? And it could be whatever it is. Like, the making sure it's realistic for you is the biggest thing, because are you willing to do what these people are willing to do? Because the people that we admire, the people that we look up to, the people that have made it somewhere in life, have sacrificed something. We've said it before. And are you willing to do the same? And if you are not, that is completely fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said a thing about values. Like, I posted on my Instagram about it, and it kind of comes down to that, because your values will ultimately kind of govern your life, and your values being whatever you value the most. And there is a difference between the values you have and the values you want to have. Like, maybe you do want to be a committed elite athlete, but your family is so important to you that you don't want to sacrifice that time to do that. Like, is that a fair trade-off? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a fair trade-off to like be a really good parent or a really good family member and not be an elite athlete because that's more important to you. Like, that's not wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, the reality is, regardless of the sport, like whether it's marathon running, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's basketball, whether it's rugby, regardless of the sport, if you want to get to the top, there's going to be some large sacrifices to make. And, you know, you're going to miss out on people's birthdays. You're potentially going to miss out on Christmases. You're potentially going to miss out on birth of children and all sorts of stuff. Like, but there's sacrifices and there's consequences to that.
I do want to say as well, like, going back to the example that I gave at the start, like, I'll play devil's advocate with it a little bit. And the question in that, like, is this the best thing for me, is a really good question, because it does make you ask, like, well, you're trying to find out what's going on, why you're doing something, but understanding that if you just aren't passionate and aren't behind it, then you're probably not going to get the most out of that. Because, like, I will sit here and say, like, we have a best option, and there is always a best option for you to do whatever. And, like, for the majority of people, a body part split when it comes to training is probably not the best option, right? Like, unless you're on tons of gear, I probably wouldn't suggest a body part split.
There's so many factors that come into play with that. Like, and some of the most simplest factors, if you like, we could talk about are just, first of all, if you're a beginner, you simply don't need that much volume in a session, and specifically localized volume. So one particular muscle group, we can get the same result, if not potentially better results, by doing less work, which therefore means further down the line, there's room for you to do more work, which means you're going to get more results. And people can't recover from that. And they simply just don't need that much work. Like, people have this assumption that more is better, whereas actually, like, better is better.
Yeah. So that thing, that's why if someone comes to you with like a solid answer of something, like, this is going to be the thing for you, like, probably don't trust that person, because there are a lot of things that do work and we do suggest. And like I said, like for the majority rule, I probably wouldn't give a body part split. But my reply to this person was, if you do, do this for 2 weeks, if you do not like it, if you can't get into it, if you can't enjoy your session, we'll change back. And the reason for that is because, again, adherence is the biggest thing and the best thing. Like, when you look at elite athletes, like, do they all follow the same training program? Probably not. So how can there be an athlete who's elite 1 and elite 2 and they're doing different things? Well, that's probably because adherence is the biggest thing to get them there, right? The program and the planning doesn't necessarily, I know it does, but it doesn't necessarily matter.
To a certain extent, yeah. I mean, going back to, I'm gonna go back on my word a little bit of what I just said. I mean, if you are in this mindset where you are not willing to do any other type of training than a body part split, and a body part split is the only thing that you are going to adhere to, you will get some results. It could probably get you better results using a different method, but if you're not going to adhere to that method, then the results aren't going to be better.
So this is why it gets really confusing for a lot of people when they're like, well, what do I do? And I find, you've said it to me before, that a lot of people just aren't ready to be coached.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes down to it a lot, because a lot of times people come to get coached out of desperation. They've tried this, they've tried that, nothing has worked. How do I get my results? Because everything I've tried has not worked. And I think that's the thing, is that understanding that everything does work, but nothing works forever.
Yep. And
if you haven't explored these other things, you don't necessarily know.
Yeah, and some people come with their own bias of what they, some people might turn up to, so take your client as example, like turns up and is expecting a body part split and doesn't get it, and then starts to question because they have a bias around what is the most optimal thing for training. And sometimes people aren't ready to be coached because they're either not there yet, or they're just misinformed. It lacks some education.
And that's one of the things that gets me about training is everything is so much different. And when you do look at like elite athletes, it does look like that's what you want to do. But have you seen The Rock's like sharing what he's doing at the moment?
For his film or something.
Yeah. And he's doing like giant sets.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't recommend that.
No, not certainly not for somebody who's just like, gym's open in July or April. Gym's open in April. I'm going to start training. Haven't trained for over a year because of the pandemic, but I just do what The Rock's doing.
Yeah.
That looks good.
And that's
The Rock's in shape.
But The Rock is in shape. And this is where you think about the cycles of change that you are going through, or the cycles of learning that you are in at the moment. I'm being honest with that. So the cycles, the stages of learning, you have unconscious incompetence. You basically don't know what you don't know. You literally are clueless. You're in the dark. You have no idea. Then you have conscious incompetence. You're now starting to understand that you don't know a lot of things. So there are a lot of things about training, about nutrition, about yourself that you don't really know, and you've got to go on a path to discover that. The next stage is conscious competence, and that conscious competence, you've got to try really hard and think about everything you're doing to get the best results, to follow the right program, to know what you know. You've got to really think about. And then you get unconscious competence, and unconscious competence is pretty much the master. You have mastered the skills. You don't even have to think about what you're doing. You are at that stage every single time you probably drive. If you've been driving for a couple of years, you're probably at that stage already. But working out where you are in that stage when it comes to your training can be really helpful, because as soon as you realize that you're probably in stage 1 or 2 and you're probably going to be there for the next 10, 20, 30 years, that's when you'll start to realize that, oh, okay, so there are a lot of options out there. I just have my blinkers on at the moment and I'm focusing on this one thing.
Yeah, I would my advice for a lot of people who are relatively a beginner to intermediate to training, and again, there's probably a lot of people who don't think they believe they're beyond an intermediate trainer, but they're probably not, is to use things like social media as a tool of motivation and a tool to maybe get a few ideas, but certainly like potentially become motivated. And then actually, either if you're educated enough to write your own training or seek the advice of a coach and listen to what they're telling you, because you're watching things on social media of people who are 10, 15 plus years further down the journey than what you are. So they're going to be doing very different things. What they're doing to get results right now is probably the stuff that you're not going to get results from doing that stuff, because they've got so many additional foundations that have already been laid down that you don't have. And also social media is just a highlight reel. So people don't put up the boring stuff, the stuff that they don't want people to see. They just put up like PBs, they just put up 1 rep maxes and all the cool stuff. So using, I know so many people who the way that they train is what they do. They go into the gym, they scroll through social media, they find a workout that looks good, and then they do it. And there's a few things that are wrong with that. The two biggest things that are wrong with that is, firstly, you're choosing a workout that's likely from somebody who you aspire to be like. So it means they're on a level that's above you, so you're not ready to do what they're doing. And secondly, you're picking workouts and choosing workouts that you like the look of, which means you're not doing the things that you're not very good at.
Legs.
Yeah, so both of those scenarios are not going to achieve the goal that you're actually looking to achieve.
So this makes me feel like, and I never understood the need for a coach or a personal trainer, right? I never got it. I never understood why anyone would have one. But that was because, for me, I was always so interested in it that I was going to do my own research. I was going to work everything out myself, and I was going to learn as much as I can because I was interested in it. And for some reason, training is one of those things which I just kind of get, right? Luckily enough that I kind of, like when you're in school, some of you get English, some of you get maths. Like training is something I just kind of understand or am passionate enough about to learn about. So one of the things that I have realized is that there are so many people out there that are just lost and that don't have the education and the understanding of what they need to do. And their best place and their best resource is like the news, Good Morning Britain, social media. And did you see the thing on, I don't know if it was, I think it was ITV or BBC, post they had a doctor come on and tell everyone they should eat 1,200 calories a day?
No.
So a guy came on and was basically because everyone's in lockdown and people are scared of putting on weight, everyone needs to eat 1,200 calories a day.
That's helpful.
Right. Do you know what I mean? And things like that, that's the problem, is because what people think is really good information and is what is helping them, it's going to be the detriment. Do you know what I mean? If you start getting everyone to eat 1,200 calories, a couple of things are going to happen there. You're either going to start to basically associate having a shit time with dieting because everyone's eating 1,200 calories, yeah, and you're not giving people the joy that they could actually get out of learning process and knowing, actually I can eat that because that's kind of less calories than that, or I should eat that because that's more healthy for me, rather than just going blanket statement 1,200 calories. That's ridiculous. And when people's source of information are things like social media, this is where I start to realize how important it is to be a credible coach, and how important it is to actually to kind of be authentic in your practice and to kind of hold yourself accountable to the fact that you are there to educate people. And if you're a coach, that should be your first thing. When you look on social media, everyone is trying to sell something on social media. So that is their main priority, or that is their driving force. So if you're someone who's looking for a coach, or if you're a coach yourself, understand the difference between what you are doing and I guess your core values that go into your motivation. Are you being motivated by the money you could get? So are you just selling bullshit products or trying to convince people of a way of doing things because that's what you think is going to help people or help you get money? Or are you doing it because you genuinely are fed up of the things you see, like eat 1,200 calories for everyone, or follow this workout plan. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but it just stresses me out. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't agree with a blanket statement of eating a certain amount of calories and just saying it's one size fits all. But there's probably going to be a few people who'll benefit from that.
yeah. But this is where it comes from.
It just lacks context.
But then I suppose that's why working with a coach can be good, because some people don't need context to start with, right? Like when you're first training someone, if you start giving the reasons why you're doing everything, they'll just shut off.
Yeah. Depends how many reasons you give and how deep the reasons are. I think everybody should be given a reason.
Yeah. Okay. So have you then ever experienced with clients almost like paralysis by analysis? Like, here's all the information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So do you think that 1,200 calorie statement gives people a good starting point? Or statements along those lines of just, here's a little bit of information?
I think the problem is, and this is what you've just said is exactly what I think the problem is. I think the main problem is like a little bit of information or a small amount of knowledge is dangerous. Whereas, so my point being, like, just telling the nation to consume 1,200 calories provides the nation with a small amount of knowledge, which is dangerous. So I'm agreeing with what you're saying. I just think like there will be a large amount because there'll be a huge amount of people who should eat 1,200 calories.
Yeah.
It just lacks context, which is the problem.
Yeah.
But that's probably the issue with this whole podcast. Well, not the issue with the podcast, like the issue with the topic that we're discussing about it on this podcast, because people going back to the point of being like, people go on social media to find workouts and look at workouts and say, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. That workout lacks context.
Right.
Because
that's part of a bigger plan.
Yeah. We don't know. I don't know. You're going on some person's Instagram and finding a workout. We don't know how long this person's been training for. We don't know what this person's goals are. We don't know anything else. We don't know. Like you look on social media and sometimes you feel like you know people and you probably don't. You know what they're willing to let you know.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine last night, actually, on the way home, and was saying that everyone has like different kind of sides of them that they show, right? So like on social media, you have like this, people normally have this social media side, and it's basically like not the person they actually truly are. Like, I mean, I very rarely fall into that trap. I do sometimes. I still have this kind of bias to want to show the best side of maybe still my true self, but probably the best side of that true self.
Yeah. I think everybody probably does that.
Everyone probably does that. And I think knowing that there are different barriers that people like, because for me, for example, like when I got with Jess, she is completely different to who I thought she was based on her social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, like, same goes for every single human out there, I guess.
Yeah. And that's the point. Like the point about that 1,200 calorie thing is like it lacks context. The point about people's workouts, like they lack context. So as an example, like I know for myself, when I put like descriptions of what my workout is on social media, I very rarely put in things like exactly how many sets I've done, exactly how much rest I had. So I know for myself, like some of the stuff that I put up lacks some context, but that's a conscious decision because, well, I can't really be bothered to write everything out to the minute detail to whack it up on social media for free because I don't have that much time. So I just put up a brief overview of what I've done. So for me, the issue with pretty much everything to do with training is like the devil is in the detail. Always. And things lack detail.
Yeah. So that detail in behind. So this is like whenever So for you then, when you post up something, like, would you expect anyone to, or if someone was following that, like, what would your actual advice be? Like, if someone saw your workout and was like, I'm going to do that, would you say, oh, it's a good idea? Would you say it's a bad idea? Or again, does it depend?
Well, yeah, it depends. I mean, like, I put it up because it's, and it, you know, and I scroll through and look at the insights and stuff, and like, I can see that if I put workout videos up and I put like a session detail in there, like it gets saves, and like, so I'm assuming it gets saves because people are then going to go and do that workout or want to do components of that workout. And so this is the reality of kind of almost some of the point that we're talking about. It's, if people want to save that and people want to go and do that workout, then absolutely they can go and do that workout. And they're probably going to get some benefit from it. But because I put thought into my training is governed by principles. So regardless of who you are, those principles are going to have carryover into your training. However, the method that I choose for my training suits my lifestyle right now. It suits my goals right now. And the intensity that I train at also suits everything else that's going on around me right now. Whereas that might not necessarily suit that individual. But then also there's an argument of, at the moment, we have this massive issue of like people just aren't doing exercise. So if to begin with, my social media posts kind of, and this happens on a regular basis, my social media posts prompt people to save them, to then go and do them themselves at a later date, enjoy those sessions, see some benefit in what they're doing within those sessions, and then inquire about coaching on a one-to-one more personal basis because of that free information they've been given. I can then really help that person and put some real context and put some detail into their training. Whereas, but again, like if
this is why the conversation is so good, is because there are so many it depend moments about
absolutely
this. And the thing with you, like, or the thing with looking at your training, success leaves clues. So when someone sees, like, a lot of times someone will do your training because they're like, I want to be like that, or I want to be able to train like that.
Absolutely.
I want to be that fit. I want to look like that, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of why we do anything, isn't it? Really. But then, if for example, like people have got like a real specific goal, just like, right, this is what I want to achieve, then going on and doing some truly individual programming around your own personal strength levels, your own weaknesses, your own strengths, those kind of things is obviously going to be really helpful. If you're somebody who's just like, I enjoy exercise, I want to get a little bit fitter, I want to get a little bit stronger, and at the moment there's no real other goal outside of that, there's nothing more specific than that, then we also sell and we also offer like a group program, whereas you pay a reduced fee, but you're getting the same program as everybody else that's on that program. And obviously the price is reflecting that. However, it goes back to what you said about stages of learning. It might just be that people are in this real, like, unconscious incompetence area, or even conscious incompetence, and kind of like, I don't really know what I don't know. So I'm just gonna, this looks cool.
Yeah. I'm
going to do this, but everybody else is also doing this. Like, I'm built into a community. It's going to provide me with some motivation. It's going to provide me with some inspiration to train. 6 months down the line, people start to move through this learning process, and then they're just like, I'm really enjoying this, but I found an area of this training program that I really enjoy. So let's say it's running as an example. And they're like, I want to get better at running. I want to improve that area because I really enjoy that. So then they might move on to something that's a little bit more personal for them. So it comes back to what you were talking about earlier, I think, in terms of like people's stages of learning.
Yeah, and working out the kind of stage you're in is really important for that example of group training. Like, you could ask us, this is why questions get so frustrating, or probably frustrating from you guys listening, because it feels like we're not giving an answer. Like, just tell me what I should do. And we can. And the reason we can is because everything does depend, and nothing is like set in stone as such. When I look through people's programming, like I've got a guy who's been on for over a year, been doing programming with him, and I got a year's worth of data which I can go back through and go, well, he responds best to this. He's more adherent when he's doing this. So this is probably the best way that he enjoys training. And I can have those conversations and work that out. But like, if you don't know, if you've never trained before, like a group setting is really good because that helps you get like that motivation, because maybe that's the part you're lacking. Maybe it's the motivation to actually just get up and do something. And this is where you start to work out like, what is the best for me? Because saying what's going to make me what's the best way to lose fat, for example. And it's like, well, are you looking for the quickest way to lose fat or the best way to lose fat for you? Because the quickest way to lose fat is like you just don't eat and you're going to run a marathon every day. But the best way is to probably start to incorporate some good habits. And if one of the biggest barriers for you is motivation, go and group training and learn and enjoy it and get some friends and find some motivation through that. Don't just think that the best thing for you is going to be the prescribed best thing, because it is if you take everything else out and we do everything in a vacuum. But life doesn't happen in a vacuum. Life is always changing, and adapting yourself to that is the most important thing. Like, there are cycles of change that we all go through. Like for this one, for example, when it comes to this change of a program, probably gets to the point of the denial part. Like, that's not going to work for me. Like, in denial that it could actually work, or that identity crisis. That's not me. Like, I can't believe I did. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those cycles of change that you are all going through, like on a micro level, but then like macro levels in your life as well. So just try to think about like where you're currently at, I guess, is the biggest thing.
Absolutely. So understand where you are in your journey and what your goals are, what it is you're trying to achieve, and understand everything else that comes into your life, like your work stress, your work schedule, your family stresses, anything and everything. And then if you are using social media as a motivational tool and an inspirational tool, and you're using other people's workouts, kind of try and understand, like, are they helping you at the moment? Or are they probably realistically outside of what you should be doing? And not really, because just scrolling through social media and finding a workout isn't taking into consideration anything else around your lifestyle. And if it's something new and it's a novel stimulus, you're going to get somewhere. You will. But there will come a point, whether that be a few days, a few weeks, or a few months down the line, where it stops working because it's not specific to what it is that you're trying to achieve. It doesn't take into account all the other stuff that's going on in your life. But if you're not really bothered too much about that stuff at the moment, and you just want to do some exercise because it makes you feel a little bit better, then almost crack on and do whatever you want.
Yeah. And that's, we say about this, like with our check-in forms, like I have people who fill out their check-in form religiously every week when I ask them to. And I have people that just don't bother filling it out. And on that check-in form, I've got like, I literally ask questions like, how has your sleep been? Like, how hungry have you been? Like all these different like questions to try and get a good picture of like how their life's been over the past like 7 days. And some people who don't fill that out, because for them, like, they're just not at a stage where it's that easy or that convenient or that important to basically focus on it. And like being realistic with that, like, brings us full circle to the fact that, like, be realistic that you aren't an athlete, and that you aren't willing to necessarily train how they are, and you aren't in the environment to train how they want to.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of pressure on people to maybe think that's what they need to do, whereas it's not what they need to do. They don't have to train that way. They don't have to live that way to achieve results. Like, you don't have to live under a rock to achieve results. Like, if you just buried yourself away and just turned into a bit of a robot, like, yeah, okay, you can achieve incredible results, but there's also going to be other areas of your life that you miss out on. And if those areas of your life at this moment in time are really important to you, then actually training that way isn't for you, and that's absolutely fine. And you could still achieve really good results from just training 3 times a week.
Yeah, legit. Like, that's what, so I've got a program literally written, for when we get busy and when gyms reopen and everything starts to kick back up, for my own training to go to 3 days a week. And I got a program written for that because I know I can still get results and still get like benefit from that.
I see this a lot when I program for quite a few people who participate in CrossFit. And one of the biggest things that I see, and I have conversations around when I start training people in that way, they're just like, yeah, so like Monday to Friday, I'm going to do, or actually they what they set. So CrossFit have this thing where like Thursday tends to be like a recovery day. And if you're tied into all of the different elements that comes under CrossFit and those kind of things, like ROMWOD is a mobility based program that ties in with kind of like what happens with CrossFit. And Thursday generally tends to be like a longer 40-minute based mobility routine. Sunday is like this complete rest day. And anybody who buys into CrossFit falls into, right, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I can do double days. Thursday, I can stretch and I can do mobility. Friday, I can do a double day. Saturday, I'll do a double day. Sunday, I'll like have complete rest. And they're a single parent with a full-time job who travels loads and works 80 hours a week. I'm just like, why? Like, why? Why are you going from training 0 to training 12 to 14 times a week? What are you expecting to achieve doing that?
This is where like it gets really difficult because for us as coaches, like if someone's really motivated, you want to kind of stoke that fire a little bit.
Yeah, you don't want to take the wind out of their sails, right?
But it's almost like how can you direct them in the right way?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Two things are going to happen. They're either going to get injured or they're going to get really tired really quickly.
So would you, like, for someone like that, like how would the conversation go when they come up to you and say like, I want to do double days? Like, and so like we've been in lockdown.
Yeah.
When gyms start up, I'm going to do double days.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting right back into it.
So firstly, I just my first point of call would just be like, have that conversation. Just try and educate them. Just be like, you don't need to do double days. And if we start on double days, then when you become accustomed to double days, if you become accustomed to them before you get injured and or really tired, which probably won't happen, then where are we going to go from then? What, we're going to go to triple days? Like, and to the point where we just training 24/7, like, so, or there are some people that I've trained who, and this approach isn't an approach I would use with everybody. It's only like done on a specific cases really. But like, if they're that adamant they want to train double days, and they just don't believe that they're going to get really tired or they're going to get really injured, I will give them double days, but I will pull the volume down a little bit so that I'm minimizing the risk of them getting injured. And I'll wait until they get really tired. And then I'll probably go something on the lines of, well, I told you so.
So I do that. It's almost like give people enough rope. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So should we now do what I said we should do?
I've had that quite a bit. And this is where like having those conversations are really important. Like your job is there to educate people and to kind of show people the knowledge that you do have and why you're helping them, which means you need to solidify and really start to work out why you are doing what you're doing, why you're doing it the way you're doing it. Because when someone asks, they expect a competent answer. So make sure you do know that if you are a coach. And if you are someone who is asking the question, like you've hired a coach, you have to trust them. The biggest thing I have in a PDF which I send to every person who comes on board, and one of the biggest things is communication and honesty. We have to trust each other. You have to trust that I have your best interests at heart and I have your goals in mind with everything I do, and I have to trust that you are going to follow the workouts I set and follow my guidance, follow the goals that I'm doing, and follow the process that I'm working on, which comes to the point of, are you and this coach or are you and this client really, really right for each other? I don't mean you got to love them, but are you right for each other?
Yeah, and also like sometimes I use that approach because, you as a coach, I am there to provide guidance. I am there to help and provide assistance. I do have your best interests at heart, but I don't do the work for you. So as the client has to make the decision.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't just sit and say, at the end of the day, like if you're going to create a collaborative approach to coaching, which is probably the best approach to coaching, it's kind of be like, this is what I think you should do. Whether you go and do that or not is kind of entirely up to you. You're an adult. You can make your own decisions. You have the ability and the freedom to make your own decisions. Whether you choose to make the decisions that I suggest you make is entirely up to you.
Yeah. Facilitate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And usually it comes back to, and unfortunately, it can be somewhere between 6 to 12 months down the line. They're just like, oh, remember what you said about like taking a rest day? Or
I have a few conversations. Like do you find the longer you work with people, the more you start to get to a place where these conversations, like, you've now got a case study pretty much to say, like, look, mate. So, like, I've got a client who basically what happens with it's about like a 4 or 5 week cycle. He basically, the first 2 weeks, he's like, doesn't miss a workout, really on it. Then work gets too busy, life gets in the way, and then he basically doesn't do anything for 3 weeks. And then he comes back to me and goes, mate, could we get back into it? And my job as a coach is to, like, I'm basically like acquiring this information, and I have to try and work out, like, because this is where it gets, like, this is where for me I start to, what I call making my money is like, right, I need to really try to help this person get out of this habit of going balls to the wall or absolutely nothing. And that's the difficult bit. Like, the programming I write him here nor there doesn't really matter at this point, because he has to work on these habits and these consistencies. Like what we said when we said about just give me my macros, like, or is it the habits? And a lot of times the same thing with the training. Yeah, give me the best program, but the habits are the more important thing.
Yeah. And a lot of that stuff that we just spoke about, again, comes back to what you were talking about earlier in terms of people's stages of learning and like that unconscious incompetence, and people just like, I want to train twice a day. And if I said to somebody, like, why do you want to train twice a day? They won't say this, because when they actually start to think about it, their logical brain won't let them answer that question. But I can guarantee you, when I ask people that question, so why do you want to train twice a day? At some point their mind goes, because Matt Fraser trains twice a day. That's all Matt Fraser does.
He doesn't do anything else. He just drinks coffee and does that.
Like, you're not Matt Fraser.
But that's like, well, it gets way into it a lot more, but that's like asking people questions as well. If you're a coach, like actually asking someone why, to think about it, is really important, because a lot of times people say they want to do things because of an emotional situation they're in, either because they have caught themselves in the mirror and they don't look like what they see, or because they've stepped on the scales for the first time in a couple of months, or what they've got a holiday coming up, and they make these emotional decisions. Probably not their logical brain, probably not like the adult part of them making that decision.
No, absolutely not.
So I suppose the biggest thing here is, like, when it comes to training, when it comes to being coach, when it comes to what you see on social media, like, take everything with a pinch of salt, I guess.
Yeah. And really start to like look at it and just be like, does that work for me?
Right.
And
give yourself time to work that out as well. Like, don't just think after a week. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's one of the other things is we're in like an instant society and we want things now. And like, weight loss takes a while.
Yeah.
If you're making better habits, better decisions, like, it's going to happen. You just have to continue along that path. If you want to gain muscle, it's going to happen, but it takes a while. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like people jump from program to program too quickly and program hopping. And
yeah, I think, and this is maybe a topic for another podcast, but it's kind of like, and I think we have touched on this on previous podcasts around, like, people always train for this real short-term goal, whereas kind of regardless of whether I'm training for an event, a goal, a competition, whatever it is, like, I still train because I love training and I just love the process of training. So rather than like getting people to fall in love with the process and falling in love with this end result is something that is a good place to start.
Have I used the chili con carne analogy on here yet?
I don't think so.
I'll use it. So the way I look at it is any goal you have, anything you want to achieve is like chili con carne. And that chili con carne is the thing you want to eat or that goal that you have. Now, if you just focus on the chili con carne and you don't think about the things you have to do to make it, i.e. you have to go to the shops, you have to buy the stuff, you have to come back, you have to brown the mince, you have to do this with the veg, you have to do that. Like all of these things that go into making this chili are the important things and the things that you focus on. Like if you just think about this chili and just think about the end result, you aren't going to get there. Whereas if you think about enjoying the process of making it, you're probably going to make a better chili than you would just going, well, that's the thing. So as long as it kind of looks like that, do you know what I mean? And that's the bit that people want to kind of avoid. But I guess the biggest thing is like, take note of where you are and what kind of situation you're in your life, and are the things you want to achieve realistic. Now, after that, then work out what do you enjoy and find some enjoyment in whatever it is you're deciding to do. And if you don't like something, then if you do have a coach, communicate that with that coach as well. Like let him know, like, look, I just can't get motivated every time I've got to go in and do this session. Like everything can be as a stress, and if that's more draining on you than positive, like let's kind of work a different way around that. So have that conversation and just stop thinking that elite athletes have got there by doing what they currently are doing.
Yeah, there's that really good saying, I think, is it Lionel Messi, who says, I became an overnight success in 17 years. Like, because people just think he turned up on the scene all of a sudden and like just out of nowhere. But
here's Messi.
Yeah, but like people don't know that the work that he's been putting in for the last 17 years.
And we will leave you with that. It takes a while to get, it takes 17 years to become an overnight success. So whatever you're in, if you are nowhere near your 17-year mark, you have a few more years to put in. Anything else, Mark?
No.
That's it?
That's it.
Perfect. So we will see you on the next one. This has been Real Coaching Radio. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you want to find either myself or Mark, you can head to our Instagram pages. Our links will be in the description below. We're going to put links to the Origin Series website on there as well. We mentioned a few programs. We have a group program going on at the moment called Strong Runner, so you can kind of head to that if you do think that maybe kind of a bit of gym work or a bit of running is a bit something you want to do, and maybe try to get some motivation, because sometimes that can be the first barrier that we all come across. So you can head to there, you can have a look, you can try to sign up for Strong Runner or any of the other programs that we have on sale there. If you do need any more information, by all means just email us, info@realcoachingradio.co.uk. Thank you very much for tuning in. This has been Real Coaching Radio. Thank you very much for tuning in to Real Coaching Radio. If you want to ask any questions or get in touch, please send an email to info@realcoachingradio.co.uk. If you are interested in joining the coaching world or just enhancing your education, please head to www.myptcourse.com. We have level 2, level 3 and level 4 courses there that will help you get started on your new health and fitness career, or maybe just give you a little bit more information and help kind of expand your knowledge a little bit. If you're looking for help with your nutrition, maybe you're coaching, maybe you want an online coach, or maybe you're in the Bristol area and you want a one-to-one PT, then you could head to www.originseries.com, origin-series.com, and you can basically find a host of different programs there. You can sign up to nutrition. There's a load of different packages. There's also a nutrition course there that you can kind of sign up for, and that will give you a basic understanding of nutrition for yourselves or working with clients. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Real Coaching Radio.